All right, guys, half of 2026 is in our rearview mirror. So today we're going to go after the stats for the mid-year point, and we're also going to go over the way to leverage the value of what we call unsold inventory. So let's get after it. All right, guys, here we are. We are hanging out in the middle of July. It is hot. It's hot, but it's also a really good market. Want to go through some quick stats. We want to talk about something we call unsold inventory. So let's get after it. Let's get out the stats. So year to date, number of listings is actually down. So a little bit less inventory coming to the market year to date as compared to this time last year. Pendings are actually up about twice that much, about 6.5% up from where we were this time last year. The net result of those two together is the number of sales that have closed year to date through the first 6 months of the year is up about 3.5%. Let's go through a couple other stats that you've got.
Days on market is kind of still up around 133 days is what we're at right now, which is a lot, I know, but it does also mean that inventory that has sat on the market is getting absorbed. Yep. So that's positive. The sale price to list price ratio, that's around 97%. Yep. So that's still a very favorable number. It still shows a lot of play back and forth between buyer and seller, but it still shows a strong market. Monthly housing supply, we're still in that balanced market. We're at 4.6 months of inventory for sale overall. Again, your particular market might be a little different, so be sure to get into that segment if you're looking at that specifically for your property. But this is just in general, the monthly housing supply is what we've been tracking.
Yeah, absolutely. And people feel it. I think buyers know they got a few more options. Sellers feel like they got a little bit more competition. Yeah. Things are taking a little bit longer to sell, that sort of thing. Let's talk about what we call unsold inventory, because it's something we really pay attention to behind the scenes, in particular, both with buyers and sellers. And I'll kind of kick that off with buyers. What do we mean by unsold inventory? We're talking about properties that were on the market but didn't sell, unsold. So they are withdrawn or they're expired, typically those two statuses specifically in the MLS. And the opportunity that rests with buyers is those are typically sellers, they just didn't have success, meaning they are still a sellable product in many cases, not all cases. Maybe they changed their mind, maybe they just said, we're going to stay put, etc. But in a lot of cases, it's because it didn't perform and they're losing faith that maybe the market will perform for them, but they're sitting there in those statuses. So if you're a buyer working with your buyer agent, that's an area to look at, especially if you're not seeing a lot of options in a particular segment of the market. Look at your expireds, look at your withdrawns, and let's have the agent get on the phone and start calling around to those listing agents saying, are they still a seller? Are they still possibly interested? And the story that comes out from that might lead down an interesting pathway. The second thing with regard to buyers is you should learn, because if you're looking in a particular market segment and you've got a lot of expired or withdrawn listings because things didn't sell, you need to be learning about the market because that might be telling you something you need to know. It might actually give you leverage for perhaps a lower offer, right? You might have more negotiability when you can go to that listing agent, say, hey, I know you're out there on the market, but look at all these that didn't sell and you've been out there for 135 days. Let's start talking about making a deal.
Sure.
Yeah, now let's talk about sellers. How do sellers need to be thinking about that?
I love sellers to think about this because data is data. We've talked about how analyzing data and verifying data is so important. Numbers on a piece of paper mean something, but if you have the story behind it, that's where you really get the context. That's where you really learn about what's going on in the market. And what I like about this is learn from other people. You don't have to take your listing, go on the market and experience everything yourself to then learn what's going on. Your agent should be getting on the phone and calling agents that had an expired listing, had a withdrawn listing, something that did not sell, and asking why. Was it pricing? Was it a condition issue? Is there something going on that you could learn from as a potential seller and take advantage of that knowledge when you go to market and not make the same mistake? And I think that's just so important to study that sort of thing and understand what's going on.
I love that because you're really leveraging somebody else's market experience. And I tell you what, it'd be nice to, a lot of people say, well, if I could only go back in time and make a decision a little bit differently, what a great opportunity to do that.
It really is. You learn so much about a market by studying what worked, and what didn't
work. Yeah. Yeah. So buyers and sellers, get prepared. Think about a way to roll up your sleeves and start looking at unsold inventory as a way to leverage your position into the market. Hopefully this has been interesting for you guys, and we'll talk to y'all soon.